Life is strange, and rarely does it follow the same path that it begins. My name is John Rowe, and this is my story. It began in 1943 while attending Olney High School in Philadelphia. I turned 18, so I registered for the draft and enrolled in ASTP, Army Specialized Training Program. I thought it would be a cinch. Since graduation that year, I would get 13 weeks of basic training, a couple of years of college in New York City, and finish up as an officer and a gentleman. Not quite. Before I knew it, I was headed for Camp McCain, Mississippi, to be part of the Army's 87th Infantry Division, which had just moved from their barracks into the field in preparation for winter maneuvers in Tennessee. Imagine the cultural shock. What was going to have been college life in a big city turned into military life in the fields of Mississippi and Tennessee. After the 87th Infantry got up to full strength of 15,000 men, we shipped out on the HMS Queen Elizabeth, the largest ship afloat at the time. After just a few days, we arrived in Greenock, Scotland, where we then traveled by train to Congleton, a small town in central England. We were billeted in an old factory building, eating only dehydrated food, which got the cooks prepared for what they would be serving. On December 9th, 1944, the day of my 20th birthday, we arrived in Metz, France, on the German border. We were now within sound of artillery fire. The next day we went on battle line, relieving the 26th Yankee Division. Within minutes we were pinned down by enemy fire. We lost several men that first day, either wounded or killed. Within a week, our company of 200 men was down to about 100. Some of the wounded eventually returned to our outfit, and replacements joined the company whenever needed. But many of them became casualties before we even got to know their names. By the end of the war, only 14 men from my original platoon of 50 remained. I was one of the lucky 14. We were given instructions to take care of our feet, and one of the things we were told to do was change our socks every day. So before I went to sleep that night, I changed my socks as told, and I put the dirty socks against my skin so that they would be warm and dry. But I didn't put my shoes back on because I wanted to let my shoes air out. We were awakened at daybreak by machine gun fire with tracer bullets flying over our heads. The bullets were from a German tank coming over a ridge right towards us. I never put my shoes on so fast, and I never slept without them again. Many of our soldiers had frozen feet, called trench foot. Many had to be hospitalized. Many lost toes or even their feet. But thanks to our good training, I never had a problem with my feet. That's not to say they were never cold, just not a problem. We made our way to the Saar Valley, where it was rainy. We traveled mostly across farmers' fields, which became very muddy. It would stick to our overshoes, forming a clod about a foot in diameter, making each step a chore. Our long GI overcoats became rain-soaked, so we cut off about a foot from the bottom to make them lighter. We discarded anything we could to lighten our load, our gas masks, our cook stove, or anything. As the weather got colder and the ground froze, artillery shells would explode and scatter parallel to the ground, causing lots of damage. Tree bursts were damaging too, raining shrapnel over everything below it, especially in the Ardennes forest. I especially feared small arms fire because I felt someone always had me in their gun sights. Artillery fire was aimed in my general direction, not just me alone, but many of the artillery shells would land within just a few feet of me, and I would hear a thud, but no explosion. We attributed our good fortune to the slave labor at the munition factories for sabotaging the shells. Artillery fire wasn't our only hazard. Many times the weather was worse than the enemy, as temperatures fell way below zero. Although we didn't like walking many miles, at least it kept our blood circulating and made the cold less destructive. Another weapon of destruction devised by the Germans was stringing a wire tightly across the road. When a Jeep came along, the wire would catch the driver's neck, most often decapitating him. On December 16, 1944, the Germans began an offensive, later called the Battle of the Bulge. It caught the Allies by surprise as they penetrated deep into Belgium. Up until then, most of us thought the war would be over by Christmas. Our 87th Infantry Division, which was part of General George Patton's Third Army, was assigned to the new battle area in Belgium. But we were 100 miles away. By now it was snowing and getting colder every day, and our transportation at the time was open stake-bodied tractor trailers. The only comfort we had was a little straw that we spread out on the floor of the trailer. On top of that, it was just beginning of what would be the coldest, snowiest winter in recent European history. We arrived in Belgium on Christmas Eve. One day, on a march from St. Vith to Saint-Hubert, we came to a crossroads, and to our horror, saw at least 25 of our comrades lying dead in the snow. The Germans had taken them prisoner and then decided to machine gun them as they were lined up. Their frozen bodies, half snow-covered, infuriated us as we thought of them and their families back home. One time we were challenged, and after being identified, we were told not to move because a wire had been strung between two trees, the end of which was tied to a hand grenade. If we had hit the wire, it would have pulled the pin and the grenade would have exploded right next to us. Being winter, everyone had a cough, so we could hear both our people and the Germans coughing, no matter where they were. One night on patrol, as we were crossing an open field, suddenly a flare went up and lit up the field like a night game at a ballpark. We hit the ground just as German machine gunners opened fire on us. Luckily there were depressions in the ground, enough to give us cover to crawl out of the range. Luckily no one was injured. While preparing for a military assault along the Rhine River, I was diagnosed with hepatitis and had to be evacuated to a hospital in Verdun, France. It was during my 30-day stay there that President Franklin Roosevelt died, and the war ended May 7, 1945. After discharge from the hospital, I returned to my original company of the 87th Infantry Division, which was preparing to return home to the United States, with orders to travel to the Pacific to invade Japan. After 11 days, we pulled into Boston Harbor and were greeted by fireboats spraying their hoses into the air and blaring welcome home music to greet us. I was at my family's summer home in Wildwood, New Jersey on a 30-day furlough when President Harry Truman authorized the dropping of the atom bomb on Japan. That officially ended the war, forcing Japan to surrender. Not only did it save thousands of lives, both American and Japanese, but it also saved us from our scheduled invasion of Japan. The 87th Infantry Division was disbanded shortly after that, but it was awarded 3 Bronze Stars for serving in Central Europe, Rhineland, and the Ardennes sector of Europe. I also received the Bronze Star. When the conflict in Korea began in 1950, I was an active member of the reserves, the 318th Tank Battalion, stationed in Reading. Our battalion was called to active duty that year at Fort Polk, Louisiana. By this time, I was married and had our first daughter. I secured a hardship discharge and returned home to Pennsylvania by August 1951, never having actually go to Korea. Every day I thank God for sending His guarding and protective angels to watch over me. My name is John Rowe, and this is my story.